This is a Pele Media podcast.
Welcome back to Goonies Minute, everybody. Goonies Minute was a fan podcast that carefully explored the movie Goonies minute by minute. I'm Brady.
And this is Chris.
And we are here joined today by my co-host from Ghostbusters Minute and Jurassic Park Minute, Kyle. Kyle, how you doing?
I'm doing great, gentlemen. I just want to congratulate you on closing the chapter on another film here. I think you guys have done a wonderful job, and congratulations for making it to minute number 107 of the Goonies. That is no small feat. Round of applause, gentlemen. Round of applause.
Oh,
you can hear the applause throughout the radio and podcast world.
Yes, you can. Well, no, none of this would be possible without you because you are, after all, the producer of the show.
The Godfather.
The Godfather of the show, and all of the clips that we're able to pull our notes from come from you, from your source.
Yeah, well, happy to do my part. I think you guys have done a fantastic job, and I'm glad that somebody tackled the Goonies because this is one of my favorite films, and I'm sure as a lot of our, if you're listening to this podcast, it's got to be one of your favorite films. But it's just, for people I think in our age range who grew up in the, the 80s and the early 90s, kind of, we were children during those phases. This was like the banner movie. I think that every child kind of like set their childhood to. I think we were like one of the last generations to have like. Even though a lot of us were latchkey kids, you still have like a sense of adventure in the world and being able to go out into an undeveloped United States of America and have adventures and stuff like that. Now, I don't know that kids always get that. Not necessarily a bad thing. I think this movie and the way that a lot of kids were in the 80s and the 70s was very dangerous to be a child then. I'm glad that they don't have to put up with a lot of the stuff that we do, that we did back then. But this movie really captures something there, and I'm so glad that you guys were able to tackle it and approach it in the way you have. So, fantastic job.
Well, I hope we were able to kind of, like you say, capture this movie as well as we could in the Movies by Minutes format. With these types of shows, you always have to wonder, did I do the movie justice? Right. Did I do the absolute best job that I could in bringing this film to this format, this Movies by Minutes format? And you never know. And you can't satisfy everybody, and I'm sure there's plenty of people out there who are just waving their fists in anger when they're listening to the show because we didn't include this piece of trivia. And we've also had this with Jurassic Park Minute and Ghostbusters Minute. Some people write in whenever we were doing those and say, this is something that you guys didn't mention. You might want to consider this. And none of it was ever out of line. And it was always very helpful. We really appreciated it.
Well, it's amazing how far we've come from which was us discussing at the Bulldog, which is a local bar here in Baton Rouge.
Yeah.
We had just recorded the Ghostbusters 2 Patreon edition for Ghostbusters Minute, and I was thinking, what's another movie? Because I really wanted to be involved with one for the whole way.
Yeah.
And I had two movies in mind, and one was Goonies and one was Back to the Future, and it's what you said, Back to the Future that had already been done. And I was thinking, let's do Goonies, and I had no idea what it would become, and I think from the start to the finish, we've done nothing but improve. But our goal was to always be prepared. Our goal was always to do, as much of a professional job as possible, but also have fun. We wanted to follow a timeline for each minute, the minute breakdown. That was important to us. But we also didn't want to limit ourselves to just what's in that actual minute, because
right.
I think it can become stale, and I think people want to hear the stories that spin off of that, the other little things that happen. I think that's what people come back for, because the people that are listening to this podcast are already fans of the movie, and we suspect already know pretty much what's going on. So if they hear us just talking about what goes on in a sequential minute, then they already know what to expect.
Yeah.
But people don't want to know exactly what to expect. They want to have a little bit of surprise, and I think that we've been able to give them that.
I hope so, and I think so. I think that there's fans of this movie who are probably able to listen to the show and find out some stuff that they didn't know, and that's our job, and I can only hope that we lived up to the task. And as I have said in the finales of Ghostbusters Minute and Jurassic Park Minute, I can't speak for the people who are doing other Movies by Minute shows. I can only speak for myself. in that I would love to hear another Goonies Minute. I would love to hear other shows in this format covering these movies because I am obsessed with these movies. And I want to get my hands on every bit of information and every different perspective and outlook on these movies that I can. And that's only going to come from more people doing this thing minute by minute. So I very much, not just welcome, but almost request that someone else do this and do a really good job at it. And I, obviously, call it something else. I wouldn't want someone else to come up with a title like Goonies Minute. And I can only, like I said, I can only speak for myself and the movies that I've done. So hopefully someone will take up that call and educate me on these things because I want all the information I can, especially about the Goonies. There's a lot going on in and behind the scenes of this movie.
I don't believe somebody should do it if they're going to quote-unquote half-ass it. Be committed to it. If you say that you're going to release it every day, release it every day. If you say you're going to release it Monday, Wednesday, Friday, release it Monday, Wednesday, Friday. The same thing that you would do in every part of your everyday life.
Yeah.
If you say you're going to do something, do it.
Do it.
It's as simple as that because it doesn't do the people that came before you justice that have done a great job. Even if you don't have the greatest show, do the best you can. Do it when you say you're going to do it. Let the chips fall where they may.
Well, I tell you what, since this is the last time we get to say this, I'm going to let Chris take it and go ahead and say it.
So you want to get into the minute?
Let's get into the minute. In the previous minute, Mr. Walsh was handed the foreclosure contract. He began to write his signature, giving the final go-ahead for the demolition of the Goondocks. At that moment, Rosalita discovered Mikey's bag containing an assortment of priceless jewels. She rushed over to the group and poured the jewels into Mrs. Walsh's hands. At the last second, the Goonies stopped Mr. Walsh from signing the contract. At minute 107, Mikey tells his dad that the Fratellis failed to take the jewels from him, and that the Goondocks are saved. Mr. Walsh begins to tear up the contract and says that there will be no more signing today or ever again. He throws the shredded contract into the air. A TV reporter steps forward and asks the Goonies to tell him their story. One by one, they list off all of the events they experienced in the caves. The last event that they tell him is about a pirate ship they discovered, filled with treasure. The sheriff steps forward and asks Chunk if he's telling another one of his tall tales. He is quickly silenced by something he sees in the distance. Everyone turns around to see that he has spotted the Inferno. Everyone stares in amazement as One-Eyed Willie's ship slowly sets sail from Astoria and out to sea. The Goonies take a seat on a rock and share a moment of reflection. Mikey gives a small wave and thanks Willie. He has now completed his own quest. The dramatic silence is quickly broken as Sloth lets out a triumphant scream. The Goonies join him and begin waving their hands in the air. We cut back to One-Eyed Willie as he continues to sail off into the horizon. And thus ends The Goonies. So here we are. We're, on the beach on this parking lot where the families of the Goonies have been able to reunite with them. The Fratellis were taken to justice. And Mr. Perkins and Troy showed up with the foreclosure documentation that's about to be signed. Rosalita has found the marble bag with all the jewels, and the Goondocks are saved. So we open up here at minute 107 with Mr. Walsh.
Oh, Mr. Walsh. Boy, he was really a tough guy. I'm not signing this.
Chris has some sort of affliction for Mr. Walsh, Kyle. I don't know if you've...
He's a bit of
just
a dork,
annoys
isn't he?
me.
He's like this...
He's a dork.
I mean, it's the character.
He's uncool.
Yeah.
That's what you call that.
What did you call him? A whipped boy or a whipped dog?
He is whipped. He is whipped. I'm sure he's a wonderfully nice man.
Oh, sure.
That tries his best to provide for his family, even though he's failing here. Maybe it's not his fault.
But you can see why.
But
Mikey,
no, he's a nice. You
can see why Mikey kind of looks at Brendan Walsh as kind of a father figure at some points in time.
He's a loving man, and you can tell he loves his kids. And there's something to be said for that.
I think that there's something in what you're saying, and it's the point you just made, Kyle. We've pointed out countless times in this that Brand lacks a certain leadership, and even though he's the strongest, the oldest, he's kind of weak. And I think it's because he might have had to have filled the role of man of the house,
or wasn't it? Well, he was. Or he's been maybe in a situation where he needs to fill that role, but he hasn't, and he doesn't know how because he hasn't had an example set forth for him by his own father.
And so he can't
maybe
really, and he can't we just kind of see him suffer.
What you think
know.
about
I don't
Kyle?
know.
What do you think about Bran? His whole personality and his development throughout the movie. What do you think
I'm
about
kind of
him?
guessing that his character arc here is that he goes from the bullying older brother to kind of a more loving brother of Mikey there at the very end. We see that, he puts him in a headlock and drags him off. Or wait, no, that's actually earlier on in the movie,
Right.
isn't it?
That was in the
Yeah.
beginning. Yeah, that was the beginning. That was actually a sweet moment in the beginning when they're on
Yeah.
the porch, right after Mr. Perkins had come for the first time to drop off the papers.
I can both identify and not identify with Bryn because being the oldest brother of four brothers, I always would go over to my friend's house and their brothers would just be like total dicks to them and like punch them and like beat us up and like try to act cool. And I always said that I'm never going to be that kind of big brother. But I also kind of identify with him because he hangs out with his younger brother a lot too, and then their friends by proxy kind of become his friends as well. So he gets in this really weird kind of situation throughout the course of this movie where he's like clearly like years older than all these like little kids, and he's not only kind of a babysitter with him, but you see him kind of like trying to work through this stuff with him as well. So it's I don't know that there's really a whole lot of character growth for really anybody in this movie. Maybe other than
Right.
Chunk, I think maybe probably has the only full character arc in the movie. I really disliked Josh Brolin in this movie, and that kind of speaks to his abilities as an actor. And of course he's Thanos,
Right.
The bad guy in the biggest movie franchise of all time, well, probably right now. And his career really had this exploded over the last like decade. You didn't hear about him for like a very long time,
Yeah.
and after No Country for Old Men, he can get any part that he wants. But to the character, it's really weird because he just kind of is this, I don't know, almost like likable bully. Like he's just bullying them there at the very beginning, but then you do kind of like start to like him a little bit over the course of the movie. But there's no real like one action that kind of defines him as a character in this movie.
I had mentioned that he's kind of stuck in a place between adulthood and Gooniehood, let's just say. He's kind of that in between, so he's kind of sometimes wants to be the adult, but he doesn't have the experience or the wherewithal to be an adult. But then he doesn't quite fit in with the kids, so he's kind of lost a little bit. And you even see that where here's a guy that obviously has the brawn to stand up to Troy. But if you notice, he still cowers from him because he doesn't have that self-confidence, I think. Even though we know he could probably beat him up. It doesn't show. It looks like Troy's the guy that's 6'5", 300 pounds, even though he's not. Because Troy is the arrogant guy that has the confidence. It's just interesting watching him. But I think he grows up maybe a little bit.
Well, it's funny. He gets his heroic moment there at the very end, and instead of like staying on the ship and trying to help the kids, he jumps in the water to go after the girl that he likes. Now, however, he does save Annie. Is it Annie or Andy? Andy. He does save her because her hands are bound. She wouldn't be able to swim. So without him jumping in there and kind of like keeping her afloat, she might have drowned. So maybe in that situation, he was trying to
And he drags Chunk out from underneath Sloth's legs.
That's
right
true.
At the end
He does
too.
save him. Yeah.
Yeah, that's true.
But I would have, I think, liked it more if there was some sort of moment where maybe he punched one of the Fratelli brothers out or gave him a black eye or something like that, or really kind of stood up at the very end. Is like
Absolutely, or punch Troy. I would have loved to see him deck Troy.
He does try and get at Troy there at the end.
Yeah, but it's kind of a weak effort. Now, Kyle, you mentioned something while in the middle of that. You talked about Chunk's development, and one thing that I kind of liked is that we know that Chunk, leading up to the movie, his character was he always lied.
Right, yeah.
And I thought that was interesting in this movie. He continually told the truth over and over and over and over again, and people didn't believe him. So it was kind of, I thought that was really interesting how they developed that, and that he constantly told the truth throughout the movie, whereas before he was a constant liar. And to see his struggle to try to get people to believe him. And then the second part about him, which maybe is more, of course, obviously a luck thing, all of his screw-ups led to things happening to where it allowed the Goonies to get to a next level or next thing to go on. So those are two things that really were interesting to me with Chunk, and I agree, he did develop as a character.
Yeah, he does.
Absolutely.
And he is also, since I haven't been on the show, I just need to point out, and I'm sure you guys have mentioned this a lot, clearly I think the best comedic chops in the entire movie come from the actor who plays Chunk. He's the scene where they're sticking him in the back of the SUV, and he's like trying to scream, and you just see him in the background as the Fratelli brothers like singing opera, and he's at first he's like saying like a Jewish like prayer in like Hebrew or something like that. Like that is everything he's got. They're trying to he's crying and confessing everything. Like I crack up every time I see that. He is. It's a shame that he didn't continue on with his film career because he really could have had a lot of stuff. But I think he's actually probably making more money now as an attorney than he would as an actor.
I know, and you know what? He's the sharpest looking handsome dude of all of them right now. He's a sharp-looking dude.
We talk about maybe some missed opportunities with the development of Brand. I think another missed opportunity in this movie is the character of the Goondocks. That's the crux of the entire movie, is saving their town, and we only get to see like little bits and pieces of it. And take Jaws. Amity Island is almost basically like a lead character in that film. It's all over the movie. And here we are trying to save this interesting, quirky little side of Astoria, Oregon, and you only get a couple of sweeping shots and everything. Now I know, this is a kids' adventure film that might all be lost on our target demographic, which is children. So I can understand why they might not have put it in. And a little too much character growth or time spent on growing the character of Brand would have gotten in the way of things that people went to this movie to see, and that's, climbing on a pirate ship.
Do you think that there's a movie to be made these days in a story about maybe gentrification or something like that? I mean, because that had to be what happened. They probably put up that golf course, and then their house was maybe a little, the 19th hole or something like that. But if they remade Goonies today, I think it would be really funny to have this town, somebody want to come in and put in an artisan mayonnaise shop or something like that where the Goondocks were. But we do kind of get some shots there at the very beginning of the film where we see them, Chunks hanging out in his arcade, and Martha Plimpton's characters, they're pulling her crab out of a bucket or something like that.
That was so weird, huh?
Yeah, you remember on our Patreon that we did over last weekend, when I was reviewing the drafts of the script, it actually made mention of what she was doing. Her dad worked on the dock, and she had to go through all of those things and pick out the crabs that they would have brought up from the
which is it's amazing that she did not freak out by that, because remember how she was with the fish head on the rake.
Yeah, that's true.
Her and Andy freaked out, and then how grossed out she is by when they kiss or attempt to kiss for the first time, yet she's not disgusted by that crab. But then again, it's to each his own of what they've experienced throughout their life. So if she's been doing this for her dad, then that would actually make sense.
It's cool that we get to see her doing that for her dad, and we get to see Mikey, working on the job with his dad. These are supposed to be kids in junior high and high school, yet they're kind of pulled into work with their parents because this is kind of the suppressed class in the Goondocks. And Brady, I agree with you. We probably should have got maybe a few more shots to kind of establish what made the Goondocks special to them. Why was home is home to everybody, but just a 30-second montage of what goes on in this town. Besides seeing the Fratellis race through it, probably would have helped a little bit, kind of raise the stakes. Of course, we understand they're losing their home, but what is the Goondocks to them? How was it home?
I agree with you. Just a few more shots before we skip to something, or you know what? You know what you could do? I'll tell you when they would have fit in, because right at the end of that chase, it's pretty cool. They have I don't know if you heard the episode where you actually see their ORV pulling down one of the side streets, and it's like they've made the escape. It's pretty cool. But they could have done some stuff there, just shown the city a little bit more, or shown that area. I'm sorry, not the city, but the area a little bit more. There's a few things they could have done, but maybe we're splitting hairs with that.
Yeah, again, okay. Have you ever seen Collateral with Tom Cruise? And Jamie Foxx, he's a cab driver, and Tom Cruise is a hitman who's got to make it drive around.
But it's a once I've seen it.
So good.
Yes, it is. How long ago was that?
A little over 10 years, maybe.
10 years.
Like
I've seen it. It's really good.
Yeah, the movie. So the people that he's, bumping off throughout the night you get little bits and pieces of how they're related to each other, and how they're related to a bigger picture. And it was this big, epic idea, and Michael Mann, the director, said, the interesting part here is this one night, this one, like, following around these two characters. We don't need all this other exposition. That's not the story. The story is these two guys going around L.A. on this one night. So it's almost like the Goonies could have been a much bigger picture, and we're only getting to see a little glimpse of it. There's everything about Mr. Walsh. I think there's a whole bunch of story and character there that we've kind of touched on.
2004, by the way.
2004.
Yeah,
Okay.
so close.
Yeah. For anyone who hasn't seen, no, that's fine. Collateral, definitely check it out.
Anyway, go ahead. That's
well, it's just
me being selfish.
it's just an idea of how I think the Goonies is almost kind of like that. We're getting like one chapter in a big book here. So I don't know, man. The Goonies is kind of primed for some expanded universe type stuff, following these characters and thus further developing all the things that we're not seeing that I think we should be seeing.
I've got a question.
Yes, sir.
How this would have been something that it would have been an amazing book. Like, it would have been an amazing 400 or 500 page book.
Okay.
And then the Goonies, the Goonies movie was a condensed version of it.
Yeah.
So, but it could have been an amazing book.
It could have definitely been.
It could even have been a 2-part book.
And I don't see why some fan out there who does
fan fiction
couldn't take that up. I mean, I'm sure there is.
I'm sure there is.
Oh,
but
yeah.
that would be really cool.
Yeah. So I want to get back to the minute here. We see Mr. Walsh excitedly tear up the contract and throw it up in the air, and then from all around him comes more pieces of paper. Have you seen this?
Yeah, I noticed that, because when he's trying to rip it, he looks like he's not even doing that well.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden it's in the air, and it's like he beautifully ripped
comes
it in
up
so many
behind him,
pieces.
yeah.
And I think
the extra confetti that comes up is clearly thrown up behind him too. Like his hands go up and it throws it in the air, and then a split second later, it's just like you can see it come up from behind where his hands were.
I almost thought that some of the paper that came down was blue, and I think the contract was all white. I don't know. I need to look at that again. But
now, Kyle,
he's a little quick to tear that stuff up, isn't he? All he's taking is his.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, okay, yes, Kyle, yes, and I have that in a note. It's like, who makes the decision to go from 0 to 100 that quickly? How could you say? Oh, the jewels. Oh, I mean, shoot, that could have been cubic zirconium, and Rosalita was just playing a joke on him for all we know.
Yeah. It'd be funny if it tore it up and threw it in the air, and then all of a sudden there was like, what did you just do? This is all like worthless. It's like you said, it's just plastic. It was like, fake jewelry back in the 16th century. Well, it's funny because we actually get a reference here to a scene that was taken out of the movie, which is something that I think left a lot of us scratching our heads for many years, and that's when Data talks about the octopus when he's interviewed there. So did you guys, whenever you heard this in the movie, like what were your thoughts on what Data was saying there?
Well, we've gone over this a couple of times, but whenever the first time I saw it, I really don't remember, man, because I've grown up like, kind of already knowing everything about this movie in advance.
Just kind of accept it.
Yeah, and so I think I had heard that there was a deleted scene. I don't know where I had heard that as a young kid. But we've kind of chalked it up to, in terms of the theatrical cut of this movie, it's kids telling fibs and embellishing things.
Right, yeah.
But it could also be an editor who got a memo very late in the game that they were taking that scene out, but he had already edited this. I have fallen into that situation myself.
There's no B-roll, no second take of it.
Yeah,
or, this is the best take that they had. Yeah.
Yeah. But we have definitely agreed that it's, for the better that breakdancing octopus didn't make it in. Now, Chris, do you have some thoughts on this?
I just want to say real quick, the first time when I saw it in the theater, being 7 years old, I didn't even catch it. I did later on, and I guess the ADD in me and I know it didn't mean anything, and I didn't watch things sometimes. I really didn't watch them movies as closely as I do now. Yeah. Like now, as I've gotten older, I watch even before the minute, and even before this minute podcast, I I watch things much closer. So as I got older, maybe in my teens is when I first was like, what is that? That's kind of weird. But it wasn't until a few months ago when I actually saw the deleted scene.
Oh, boy.
Yeah. Now, Kyle, you have some notes on this, don't you?
Yeah, I do. You know, what's funny is actually, so one day I was watching The Goonies, just like on a random Saturday. It was on the Disney Channel, and I was watching it, and the octopus scene was in the movie. Because sometimes when they play movies on TV, they need to fill a certain time, or they need to cut some objectionable content. So being the Disney Channel, they had taken something out somewhere, and they stuck the octopus scene in the movie. And I was like, oh my God, I must be watching like a director's cut or something like that. Because I think I caught like in 1989 or 1990, they played Aliens on CBS one time, and they played the actual director's cut of it, which has all this extra stuff, like another half hours, 45 minutes worth of content in it. And that was the first time I saw that movie. So I rented it later, and I'm like, wait, where's all the stuff that I saw in that, that other time? So they actually played the part with the octopus, and I was like, oh, this is stupid. Oh, this is horrible. No wonder they took this out. A few months later, I'm like at a party, and this was probably like in 1999, maybe 2000, something like that. And some people are talking about the Goonies, or somebody had just seen the Goonies for the first time, and immediately the question of the octopus came up. Somebody said like, "Oh, what was this scene where he's talking at the end of the movie about the octopus? I guess we'll never know." And I like jumped over a couch and I was like, let me tell you what happened there. And I felt like so cool, but also I had zero proof because this was a time before the Goonies was released on DVD, and you couldn't get a hold of a VHS copy with this this edited out scene or whatever. So, but this is really funny because they actually. There was this scene with the octopus they kind of had some high hopes about the scene, so much so that they actually wrote a song about it and included it on the Goonies soundtrack. So
what? I did not know that.
There was a song produced for the scene called 8 Arms to Hold You by the Goon Squad. And the Goon Squad was just a group of studio musicians that came together and recorded this because they thought that this scene with the octopus was going to be like such a big deal. That song, 8 Arms to Hold You, is the song played whenever Data sticks the tape player into the octopus's mouth that makes it breakdance and everything. They thought this was going to be this huge silly scene, and the song was going to be like a huge hit. And they actually had a lot writing on the song.
Jesus.
Because it wasn't used in that scene, that song was used earlier in the film whenever whenever Chunk walks into the Walsh's house. You can kind of hear it muted there in the background.
Okay.
So, but 8 Arms to Hold You was also the working title for the Beatles movie Help, if you remember correctly.
Yeah.
And the 8 arms in that actually referred to the 8 arms of the goddess Kali, which is a parody of the Thuggee cult, which was also in the Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. So, and it actually, 8 Arms to Hold You eventually became the title of Veruca Salt's album, which I think Veruca Salt was going through like a Beatles phase, and they had a lot of references to the Beatles during that period. So, but yeah, it actually reached #1 on the Billboard Hot Dance Club Party charts, and I think it reached like number 80 overall.
Wow.
Which is funny because the song like leaves no impression. So they actually made a music video for it as well, which you can find online,
goodness.
and I think it appeared on like Night Flight, which was this late night kind of like music video thing. So the video's hilarious. It's got this woman, and she's
you
like
went
getting
deep
out of
on this, man.
She has an octopus pet in like a little aquarium or whatever, and she takes it out and it's looking at her, and she's like, "Oh, you're my little pet," and puts it in. The song 8 Arms to Hold You, which is completely forgettable, is playing in the background. The octopus eats some plant food while she's getting dressed to leave, and it grows big, and then it like sneaks out of the aquarium while she's going to audition for the band, the Goon Squad. She wants to be the lead singer for it. So the octopus grows up, eats all the food in her house, and then somehow realizes that she's getting attacked by punk rockers at the studio when she's auditioning for the band. So it shoots itself across town and then attacks the bands. It's this whole like weird clay animation thing. But I would suggest if anything I'm saying to you strikes your imagination at all, definitely go look up this video because
I'm going YouTube all of this. But you know what I would like? I would have loved to bring somebody in that's never seen this movie and just let you sit down and say what you just did and see if they call somebody to put you in a straitjacket.
Yeah, right.
You know, I mean, like that's awesome.
Yeah.
And crazy, and I love it. I love this kind of stuff. That's like I love it. I love finding out new stuff like this. Like I can't wait to go. Like, well, I'm going to use the auxiliary cord, the YouTube, and it's going on in my car as soon as I leave here.
So,
you know?
Well, I mean, Go ahead.
Chris,
is
being
great.
a wrestling fan, have you seen the full video for Cyndi Lauper's Goonies Are Good Enough?
Yes.
Yeah, that
oh,
was one.
yes.
That was another one
That's
where like
unbelievable,
it's
huh?
crazy, and I really like that song. I think that song is pretty amazing.
Oh, I do too.
But when I was
love
young,
it.
also they aired on MTV so that's a 2-part video. There's like they do the video for
Yep.
Good Enough, and then there was a sequel
and the
video.
girls just want to have fun.
Yeah, which was like a remix
Yeah.
of The Goonies Are Good Enough. And I remember seeing that first video on MTV when I was a little kid, and then I don't know if they ever aired that second video, but the first video ends on a cliffhanger where Cyndi Lauper's like screaming for Steven Spielberg to come help her or whatever, and then it just
Yeah,
ends.
Captain Lou is the dad.
Yeah, Captain Lou Albano is the dad, or Roddy Piper. Is Ivan Koloff is there?
Is Mr. T in it?
I don't know Mr. T isn't, but this
don't
would
know
have been
if
the
he
time
is
of
in
the
it.
Rock and Wrestling Connection
been a-
because Cyndi Lauper
Yeah.
did end up at WrestleMania 1 fight. She was in the corner of Wendy Richter, I think, when she fought Fabulous
Right.
Moolah.
And it was Mr. T and Hulk Hogan versus let's see, Paul Orndorff and
Bob Orton, I think, right?
Yeah.
No, it was yeah, you're right. It's Paul Orndorff and Roddy Piper, and Bob Orton was in the
Roddy
corner.
Piper.
'Cause, yeah,
Yeah.
Snuka was in
Yeah.
the corner of Mr. T
Yeah.
and Hulk Hogan. So, but yeah, Cyndi
That's
Lauper
it.
was all over the Rock and Wrestling Connection back then, and she and Steven Spielberg had a pretty close relationship because she actually was asked by Spielberg to be the producer for the soundtrack to this movie. So they had the 2 songs by her on the soundtrack. She also got the Bangles, Tina Marie, REO Speedwagon, and Luther Vandross to put songs on the soundtrack as well. So that's
awesome.
I really love the song Goonies Are Good Enough. I think it's a great pop song, and it's really weird because they show it earlier in the movie. They're actually watching it
Right.
on TV, and the funny part is that movie wasn't
Right.
shot, and that video wasn't shot until 6 months after the movie had finished production. So
Wow.
That's pretty cool.
It's a really weird thing for them to drop in there. So, but
No, that song was one when I used to do 80s mixes whenever you would burn in CDs
Oh, yeah.
back in the late 2000s. It was always on my 80s mixtape.
It's a good song.
It was hard to
man.
get a hold of for a long
great
time
song.
too. Like I think through like Napster and LimeWire and Kazaa is really the first time I even had access to it.
Oh, Napster.
Yeah.
Oh, Napster. Well, let's see.
I tell you what, in getting back to the minute, is just a couple more things I wanted to mention. Number one, of course, you do have an iconic picture of when they're looking at the Goonies and Sloth's with them. They have it from the back and they have it for the front, and it's right after. It's when you hear the music change, and the reporter says, "Holy Mary, Mother of God." Yeah.
The sheriff.
It's like, or is it the sheriff? The sheriff does
yeah,
that.
right.
Oh, and then the next thing is the reporter goes from
It's a
being
pirate ship.
so, ladies and gentlemen, we're here from a story, or the point, or whatever he says, but he changes his voice completely, and it goes. So you're going from Mr. Reporter intense to this is like a godlike thing that we're seeing. So you see that beautiful pirate ship.
He goes to being like some southern
Yeah,
gentleman.
and it's just beautiful. It's
Yeah.
a beautiful scenery, beautiful sunset.
It's a very
And
touching.
you're having
moment.
this really, and you're having this really touching emotional moment. But I love how they went to the finish quick. All of a sudden, Sloth starts yelling, "Ah!" and they do the dun 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 real quick.
Yeah,
Da-da-dun-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. You know the
so
way
it kills
they
it
end
for
it.
you, or
Huh?
does it kill it for you? Sloth, like,
No, I loved it
yeah.
because it went from being kind of emotional and sad to wait a minute, this is fun, and they won,
Yeah, absolutely.
and I loved it.
And I think it's-
love the way they did it.
It's cool that Sloth gets to the last word, too.
Get all the emotions there. Touching, and then it's like, wait a minute, we can't be sad, even though it's a happy sad. We need to be
Yeah.
excited, and then I think that's great. It could not have ended better.
No,
as far as
it
I'm
really
concerned.
couldn't have. And it's
Even though we talked about there could have been a little rebuttal from the Perkins.
Oh,
But
yeah.
after that, it couldn't have ended better.
No, absolutely. I think it's there's some beautiful camera work done with the pirate ship going through the rocks in the distance, which
Yeah.
I can't tell if that's real or a miniature.
So
I'm
the
sure
majority
it's-
of the
it's
time
not.
that I spent researching this minute tonight was trying to figure out if that was a real pirate ship that they had sailing through the rocks. Because when it goes between the rocks, it looks like a real ship, and then at the very last shot where it's sailing off into the sunset, clearly
Yeah.
it's
I mean, that one's
green screen.
Yeah.
Yeah, but there are companies that will actually make pirate ships for movies. The Pirates of the Caribbean movies have this company come out and make like the Black Pearl or the Dauntless or whatever for each of their movies, and I'm sure it's a massive undertaking. But I figured for this they probably could have gotten like a there's ships out there, like, historical recreations of ships that sail from port to port, and kids can go on and look at it, and, they'll tell you about
There's one in Treasure Island, Florida, where my girlfriend has a timeshare each year outside of Tampa.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And not the one at Tampa Raymond James Stadium either, but the actual goes into port there, and people can get on it. And I've got pictures of this thing. It looks exactly like One-Eyed Willie's ship. And I'll be there in a month, and I'm going to take pictures from on
Very
it.
cool.
Just this last weekend,
I actually could post a video of it. That's what I'll do.
do that. Just this last weekend, one called El Galleon, which travels the world, actually came to Baton Rouge and was docked for a couple of weeks, and we went on it. And man, those guys had it tough. Yeah. I mean, there's just some tight quarters. Living on one of those things would not have been that much fun, especially not when your captain kills you.
Yeah.
And then locks the ship away in a cave.
The Inferno seems like it was a real hellhole to be a crew member of,
Yeah, seriously. So yeah, that ending is incredible, and it's got great camera work. The music is half of what makes that ending so incredible.
Score is amazing.
Absolutely. I'm glad that the Goonies the official Goonies get their own shot, and there's a certain kind of the music peaks at one point, and you just see the official Goonies looking out. And it's a great send off.
There's a finality.
Yeah, exactly. It's a very
music.
satisfying ending.
Yeah, it is.
And then yeah. So, we talked with Mark about if the ship sailing out was One-Eyed Willie's last booby trap.
Yeah.
In that if you were to touch that treasure, you were going to be set out to sea with no way to get back. Granted, you could jump off, but it's sort of the idea is that
That's
you're
what
going
I think the idea
Yeah,
is,
you're trapped or whatever.
Well, also, if
course,
it sails out, and there's a dead crew on it, that thing eventually is going to sink, so it's kind of like the last time that One-Eyed Willie's able to take his treasure down with him so nobody else can touch it, too. So
That's true, yeah. There's that, too. And then we get Mikey giving a little gratitude towards Willie, which was cool. There is that respect. I
think we needed to see that.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, we needed that closure. And it's a bittersweet closure for Mikey. Yeah. And I've always enjoyed bittersweet endings in movies. And they can get a little cliche. I mean, you always know the beats of so you're going to be all right. I think so. And then your two protagonists.
What's his name?
What?
Why can't I remember the dude's name from The Matrix? What's his name?
Lawrence Fishburne?
No.
Keanu Reeves.
Yeah, that's who you sound like. Oh, he sounded just like Keanu Reeves right there. That's funny.
Okay. So anyway, I forgot what I was talking about.
I do that.
Yes, you do. Yes, you do. It's a great ending, and that's where we were. I don't know. I think it's the right way to end the movie. Is the fact that they don't get the treasure. They don't really get what they set out for. Granted, they get just enough to save the Goondocks, but. Okay, so they got what they needed to save the Goondocks, but Mikey Walsh set out to find the ship, claim the treasure, and even if not to claim the treasure, be the one to finally discover this ship. Be the one to beat One-Eyed Willie at his own game. And so he did it.
Very competitive.
He's very competitive, and he won. And so when he says, thanks, Willie, I don't think he's saying thanks for helping me save my community. I think it's thanks for giving me the opportunity to prove something to myself that I lacked at the beginning of this movie.
I buy that.
Yeah.
I've got one note. There's a little musical interlude. It's kind of played throughout this movie, and I don't know what to refer to it as. I don't know whose theme it is, but when Mikey is waving goodbye to One-Eyed Willie there, they kind of play it. It's the, like that sound like that. Mm-hmm. That is, I think, it reminds me a lot of a song called Bury Us Alive by the band STRFKR. Don't want to say the full name on the show. It's a family show, but yeah, and they're a band from Portland, Oregon, who had an album called Reptilians, and they also have a song on that album called Astoria. And I was never able to really, I don't think it's a sample of it, but I think they're trying to emulate that little note from the Goonies. But
really,
yeah, this movie does have an amazing soundtrack, and it's got a great score, excuse me, and it's a great send off there for the Goonies at the very end. I think it fits really well. It's very rousing, and seeing the pirate ship go off into the sunset, you do kind of feel like the story's come full circle. So.
And to go back to those couple of musical notes, that comes from this sort of discovery theme that they play throughout the movie that Chris has made mention of several times. And it's always played over these minor chords, and it's very dramatic and mysterious. And we get it here at the very... And you always get it with Mikey. It's really only ever played when Mikey's got something going on. And here at the end, it's played over a sort of like more of a positive sound in the
Yeah.
music. So I think it kind of adds, subconsciously to the fact that this person has, gotten himself to some kind of positive ending. So just as I think this show has come to a positive ending, I do believe, 5-6 months in? What do you say, Chris?
Well, considering it's 147 minutes, 4.5.
4.5? Damn.
Yeah.
Man, it seems like Ghostbusters Minute lasted years. And Jurassic Park Minute
It's
lasted
because
a
we were
while.
on the verge of a fourfold crossroad.
I knew it.
PKE surge of immense, even dangerous.
I
proportions.
knew we couldn't get through this without a reference. So, Chris, I guess if something else comes to mind about the Goonies from either one of you, just go ahead and chime in. But, Chris, your experience with Movies by Minutes, what's it been like?
It has allowed me to voice my opinion on many things that I have not had a chance to voice to as many people as I do now.
Mm-hmm.
It has given me a platform to make my brain work in a different way.
Mm-hmm.
It has given me ideas of other things that I want to do. It's made me want to engage the both of you and others about different ideas. I always said, the worst thing that's going to ever happen from doing this podcast and this podcast business is we're going to have a lot of fun. The best case that's going to happen, we make some money. But if the worst thing that can happen is that I have a great time doing it and I meet really cool people, then I consider that a win.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I'll leave it at that.
That's good. Very good. I think this might actually be my retirement for Movies by Minutes. I think it's
We'll see about that.
we'll see about that. I'm gonna hit stop recording here and be like, oh, wait a minute. Weekend at Bernie's 8 hasn't
Well,
had a.
that's one of the things, as I said. That's why if we do it, we ever do that again, I'm going to be able to help you with the editing because that's the thing that's tough. It's made me work my brain in a creative way, and that's what I'm excited about.
That's the beautiful thing about podcasting, and it's a beautiful thing I think about the Movies by Minutes platform, and what the guys over at Star Wars Minute, were able to do is to give people like you and I and all the other people in this little Movies by Minutes family an opportunity to do, and that's engage and have fun, and that's what it's all about. That's what it's all about.
It's made me look at it makes me look at all movies differently, and probably makes me enjoy movies more because I feel like I have a better understanding other than just on the surface. So that's kind of exciting for me.
Yeah, definitely.
But that's it. That's all I got.
That's all I got. Chris, it's been real, dude.
It's been fun.
I've had a good time doing this with you. And Kyle, you got anything else?
That's pretty much all I got. Congratulations again for making it this far, and thanks to you guys for sticking it out. This is Movies by Minute thing is really fun, but about 3/4 of the way through the movie, it also gets to be very, very taxing. And you still love doing the episodes, but it's definitely a huge time sink. And but I think you guys, have done a really good job with what you've done here with Goonies Minute. And I think this one will stand the test of time. So congratulations, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right, well, I'll tell you what, before we go ahead and get out of here for the last time, I want to read a passage from the original draft of the script, an oath that the Goonies gave to each other. I will say it to you guys, our listeners, and all the other Goonies out there in the world. I will never betray my Goondock friends. We will stick together until the whole world ends. Through heaven and hell and nuclear war, good pals like us will stick like tar. In the city, or the country, or the forest, or the boonies, I am proudly declared one of the Goonies. All right, so for the last time, this is Brady,
And this is Chris.
And this is Kyle.
and we're here to remind you that Goonies never say die.